The night my husband said he needed space, I was standing in the kitchen holding our screaming 1-month-old daughter and a bottle I hadn't even had time to warm. He didn't look angry. He looked relieved, like leaving me was the first honest thing he'd done in years. Then he picked up his suitcase, said he was going to Europe with his friends for a month, and walked out while I was still bleeding, barely sleeping, and learning how to be a mother alone. But 31 days later, when he came back and knocked on my door, he wasn't smiling anymore. At first, I thought he was joking.
People don't just leave like that.
Not when there's a newborn in the house. Not when your wife hasn't slept more than 2 hours in weeks. But he was already zipping up his suitcase. Moving like this had been planned for days. I just need time, he said, avoiding my eyes. I'll be back before you know it. Before I know it, I looked down at our daughter, her tiny fists shaking, her cries filling the silence he left behind. And in that moment, something inside me didn't break. It went quiet. The first night without him felt endless. Every hour blurred into the next. Feeding, burping, changing, pacing the floor while my daughter cried like the world had abandoned her too. Maybe it had. I stopped checking the clock after 3 a.m. Time didn't matter anymore.
Survival did.
By the third day, my body moved on instinct. Warm the bottle, rock her gently, whisper things I didn't even believe myself. It's okay. Mommy's here. Meanwhile, my phone lit up with his version of checking in. A selfie in Rome. A group photo in Ibiza. A blurry video of him laughing somewhere in Paris. Wish you were here, one caption said. I stared at that message while sitting on the bathroom floor, my daughter finally asleep against my chest, and felt something sharp settle inside me. Not sadness.
Clarity.
He wasn't overwhelmed. He wasn't confused. He was gone, by choice. His mother called a few days later, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. Give him time, she said. Men handle pressure differently. Pressure. That word echoed in my head long after the call ended. Because this wasn't pressure. This was abandonment dressed up as self-care. That night, as I rocked my daughter in the dim light of the living room, I made a quiet decision. I would stop waiting for him to come back and start figuring out how to move forward without him. The next morning, I stopped crying, not because I felt better, but because something inside me had shifted. Waiting wasn't an option anymore. If I stayed in that place, hoping, checking my phone, replaying his words, I would drown. So I started with the smallest thing I could control. I made a schedule. Feeding times. Sleep windows. My own meals. Even when I didn't feel like eating. I wrote everything down like it was a job because now it was not just surviving motherhood, but managing a life he had walked away from. Then I opened our bank account. That's when reality hit harder than anything else. Charges I didn't recognize.
Flights.
Hotels. Restaurants in cities I'd only seen in movies. Thousands of dollars gone in less than a week. My hands didn't shake this time. I just kept going. I downloaded statements, took screenshots, changed passwords where I could, moved what little I was allowed to move into a separate account. Not out of anger, but out of protection. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was thinking. Later that afternoon, while my daughter slept beside me, I made 2 calls. One to a freelance client I hadn't worked with since before pregnancy. The other to a legal office just asking questions. Nothing dramatic. Just information. Because somewhere between the sleepless nights and the silence he left behind, I realized something I should have known all along. I had been holding everything together. And now, I still was. He came back on the 31st day. No warning. No message. Just a knock on the door at 2:14 in the afternoon while I was folding laundry in the living room. For a second, I froze. Then I walked over and opened it. He stood there with a tan, sunglasses pushed up into his hair, suitcase in one hand like he had just returned from a normal trip, like nothing had happened. Hey, he said, smiling carefully. Can I come in? I didn't move. The silence stretched just long enough for his smile to falter. I've been thinking a lot, he continued. The trip helped. I just needed to clear my head, you know? Clear his head. Behind me, the apartment was quiet.
Clean. Organized.
Our daughter was asleep in her crib, her routine undisturbed. Everything he had walked away from was still standing, just without him in it. "You look good," he added, almost surprised. "I was worried you'd be overwhelmed." I almost laughed. Overwhelmed. I stepped aside slightly, just enough for him to see inside, but not enough to invite him in. His eyes scanned the room. The neat stacks of paperwork on the table. The absence of his things by the door. The calm he clearly hadn't expected. "What's going on?" he asked slowly. I met his gaze, steady for the first time in weeks. "I stopped waiting," I said. And I started preparing. For the first time since he arrived, he didn't have anything to say. "What do you mean, preparing?" he asked, stepping closer like the answer might still be something he could control. I stayed where I was. "It means while you were traveling, I was fixing what you broke." His jaw tightened. "Come on, don't be like that." I said I made a mistake.
A mistake.
"You didn't forget to take out the trash," I said calmly. "You left your wife and your newborn for a month." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. I was overwhelmed. I didn't think clearly. "But I'm here now, okay? We can move past this."
We.
That word didn't belong to him anymore. "I spoke to a lawyer," I said. He stopped moving. I separated what I legally could. I documented everything. Dates, transactions, messages. "I know exactly where our money went while you were finding yourself." His expression shifted, confusion, then something closer to panic. "You went through my accounts?" "Our accounts," I corrected. "The ones paying for your flights and hotel rooms." Silence filled the doorway. "I just need a chance," he said, softer now. "Let me come inside. Let me hold my daughter." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I reached for the envelope on the table and handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "Everything you need to know," I said. He didn't open it. He didn't have to, because for the first time he understood. This wasn't a conversation. It was an ending. He stood there for a moment longer, the envelope hanging loosely in his hand like it weighed more than he expected. "I didn't think you'd do this," he said quietly. I almost smiled. "That's the problem," I replied. "You didn't think." He looked past me, toward the crib down the hallway, like he was searching for something familiar. Something he could still claim. "Can I at least see her?" he asked. I shook my head gently. "Not today." His shoulders dropped, the confidence he walked in with completely gone now. For the first time, he looked like someone who understood consequences, not just the idea of them, but the reality. "I never meant to lose you," he said. "You didn't lose me," I answered. "You left." The difference seemed to land harder than anything else I had said. He nodded slowly, like he finally understood, then turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door. And for a second, I just stood there, hands still on the handle, listening to the quiet. Not the heavy, suffocating quiet from before. A different kind, peaceful. Behind me, my daughter stirred softly in her crib. I walked over, picked her up, and held her close, breathing her in like a promise. The hardest month of my life hadn't broken me. It had shown me exactly who I was, and who I would never allow back in again. He left thinking I needed him to survive. He came back to find out I never did.